Right, we come to the first urgent question. Lisa Smart.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask the Secretary of State for the Home Department if she will make a statement on police reform.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I start by thanking the Honourable Lady for this urgent question on this very important subject. At its best, policing in England and Wales is truly world-class. Every day, officers perform their duties with courage, skill and dedication, and we are all grateful to all of them. At the heart of our British policing tradition is the notion of policing by consent, which is dependent on maintaining mutual bonds of trust between officers and the local communities they serve. But over the last decade or more, policing has faced a perfect storm. As visible neighbourhood policing has been decimated, as law enforcement has struggled to keep up with fast-changing crimes, as outdated technology has held forces back, and as confidence has fallen in communities and amongst victims, because far too often people feel that if something goes wrong, no one will come and nothing will be done. But for too long, instead of government showing leadership and helping the police to navigate these testing times, predecessors in our department have just walked away. This government will not stand on the sidelines while public confidence and public safety are put at risk. And that's why we're pursuing our unprecedented Safer Streets mission, to reduce the most serious violence and to rebuild confidence in policing and the criminal justice system. Now, to successfully deliver that mission, we need forces that are fit for the challenge of today and tomorrow. That is why the Home Secretary yesterday announced a programme of police reform that will be pursued in partnership with policing. And under our neighbourhood policing guarantee, we will restore patrols to town centres and rebuild the vital link between forces and the people they serve. To drive up performance and standards, a new performance unit will be established in the Home Office, which will use high-quality police data to spot trends, improve performance and consistency. And we will work with policing to create a national centre of policing to bring together crucial support services such as IT, aviation and forensics. We will present a white paper on police reform to Parliament next year. The 25-26 police funding settlement for police forces, including full details on government grant funding and precept, will be set out to Parliament in the normal way before Christmas. But the Home Secretary confirmed in her written statement yesterday that as part of that settlement, direct central government funding for policing next year will increase by £500 million. That's core grant and additional funding for neighbourhood policing, counter-terrorism and the National Crime Agency. Mr. Speaker, we are at a critical juncture for policing, and we cannot go on as we have been. So together with the police, we will embark on this roadmap for reform to get back to those precious Peel principles and to rebuild the confidence of our communities in the vital work the police do every day to keep us all safe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very grateful to you for granting this urgent question. Yesterday, the Home Secretary announced significant reforms to policing through a written statement, a comprehensive restructuring of policing in England and Wales, which will affect thousands of personnel, create a new performance unit and establish a national centre for policing, surely merits some parliamentary scrutiny and an opportunity for members of this House to question what it means for their constituents. So for my own Hazel Grove constituents, what does it mean for Mellor, the most rural part of my constituency? There was no specific mention of rural crime in the Home Secretary's statement, and so I'd ask the Minister what her plans mean for those tackling crime in our rural communities. What do the plans mean for places like Woodley, a district centre in Hazel Grove, which is seeing far too much antisocial behaviour and shoplifting? And what do the plans mean for places like Offerton, where illegal off-road bikes are causing havoc on our roads? What will the plans do to better encourage the police to work with local partners to tackle this problem that is blighting so many? Any police reform must include addressing the Conservative cuts to police community support officers too, who are so often the face of proper neighbourhood policing. My own Greater Manchester Police Force has seen more than 350 PCSOs cut since 2015. More than anything, we need to ensure that these reforms deliver the proper frontline policing our communities deserve. Years of ineffective resourcing from the previous Conservative government have left our police forces overstretched, under-resourced and unable to focus on the crimes that affect our communities the most. It's no wonder, Mr Speaker, that the vast majority of burglaries are still going unsolved, while 7 out of 10 car thefts last year didn't even have a police officer attend the scene. It is genuinely good to hear that more resources will be committed to neighbourhood policing. But as we saw with the Conservatives' Police Uplift programme, more resources doesn't automatically mean that communities will see the difference. So I would welcome assurances from the Minister on how the Government will ensure that officers actually have the time and resources to focus on their communities with more bobbies on the beat. Thank you.
I very much welcome the interest that the Honourable Lady is showing in this area. It's the statement that was laid yesterday, the written ministerial statement, was setting out the direction of travel for this government in terms of police reform. As I said in my response to the Honourable Lady's urgent question, there will be a white paper that will be published in the spring. There will be full consultation with, I'm hoping, parliamentary colleagues, as well as with policing, PCCs, all the key stakeholders. This is about the start of the process, so many of the questions that the Honourable Lady was asking will be part of the consultation and the discussion and the conversations that we want to have next year. But can I reassure her that the Safer Streets mission very much is about the neighbourhood policing guarantee. It's about delivering the 13,000 additional police officers, PCSOs and specials back into our neighbourhoods, reinvigorating that neighbourhood policing model. And I think it's also important to say, the Honourable Lady mentioned antisocial behaviour and shoplifting. These, again, are issues that we will be dealing with and bringing forward legislation, particularly around shop theft. The standalone offence of assaulting a shop worker, the removal of the £200 threshold that the previous government had introduced, which meant there was almost a shoplifter's charter that they could actually steal up to £200 and there'd be no action. We're getting rid of that. We are taking action now, but the broader police reform, we will have that conversation next year. This was about setting out the direction of travel.
Davies. Thank you, Mr Speaker. On Friday, I spent some time on patrol with Telford Police, and Sergeant Alex Webb told me about her frustrations of not being able to get repeat offenders of antisocial behaviour off the streets of our town centres and high streets. Mr Speaker, when will the Government give the police the tools that they need to deal with these issues and get the jobs off our high streets and our town centres?
Well, I'm grateful to my honourable friend for that question. And of course, this week is Antisocial Behaviour Awareness Week, to actually focus in on the effect that antisocial behaviour can have on individuals and to communities. And my honourable friend is absolutely right. We need to tackle the antisocial behaviour. That's why the neighbourhood policing guarantee, getting those officers back onto the streets, alongside the other measures we'll introduce around keeping our town centres and high streets safe, are so important, and we will be bringing those forward in due course.
Shadow Secretary of State Chris Philp.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, firstly, let me welcome the Police Minister to her role, succeeding the job I did in the last government. I genuinely wish her well in the job, and I hope she does succeed in it. It's important for the whole country. I'm sure the whole House will want to join me in thanking the police up and down the country for the work they do keeping us safe. Each morning when they put on the uniform to go to work, they take risks required of few other professions. Mr Speaker, the police headcount in March of this year hit 149,769. That is a record ever number of police. It's 3,000 higher than the previous record. So my first question is this: will the Police Minister commit to at least maintaining, if not growing, that record police officer number? Secondly, will the Police Minister join me in welcoming the fact that overall crime in the last 7 years, as measured by the Crime Survey of England and Wales, the ONS say that's the best measure for crime trends has come, including fraud, has come down by 17%. Now, the written statement yesterday, and indeed the Home Secretary's speech to the MPCC yesterday, talked about the importance of technology, something I feel very strongly about, as she knows. Now, in the March budget, the previous Chancellor committed to £230 million of spending on police technology over 4 years, of which this year is the first. About £80 million was due to be spent this year. So will the Honourable Lady confirm that the £80 million for this year is secure and that she and her colleagues will honour the £230 million commitment over the coming 4 years? Does she also agree that it's important that police spend their time actually investigating crime, not policing thought? So does she agree with me that the guidelines need to be changed so that police only spend time investigating real crimes and only investigate non-crimes where there is a real and imminent risk of criminality? That would be a change of guidelines. Will she make those changes? Finally, regarding this reform programme, we need to see the details, of course, but will she confirm that no money will be taken away from local police forces? Will she confirm that police and crime commissioners and chief constables will continue to be fully empowered? And finally, on the question of police funding, she mentioned some numbers for next year's funding settlement. Now, she will be aware that this current financial year, when I was Police Minister, we arranged a £922 million increase in the funding for frontline policing this year compared to last. The numbers she's talking about in the statement are much lower than that. So will she take this opportunity to commit that any funding increase for frontline policing that she brings forward in the police funding settlement will be at least as big as the one that I announced last year?
Well, I think this is the first opportunity I've had to welcome the Right Honourable Gentleman to his new role as the Shadow Home Secretary. But I do think he might be forgetting a few facts, because if I recall, during the course of the previous 14 years, the Conservative government slashed policing by over 20,000 police officers and many support staff as well. So whilst I acknowledge the Uplift programme was brought in at the end of their period in government, they did get rid of a lot of very experienced and good police officers. And also, just to remind him, we stood on a manifesto commitment of 13,000 additional police officers, PCSOs and specials as part of our neighbourhood policing guarantee. I know the Right Honourable Gentleman is very keen on technology. I think that was one of the things he absolutely focused on, and I've certainly taken up some of the issues that he was concerned about around live facial recognition, and I want to see that investment continue. Can I also just say to him, I think again he's forgetting a few things, because he refers to the non-crime hate incidents and the guidelines. Now, if I recall, he was actually the minister that introduced those guidelines when he was the policing minister. So I listened to what he says, but I do think he just needs to remember what he actually did when he was the policing minister. And I take the approach that this should be an issue that is around common sense and consistency, and that's what the HMIC FRS have said about the need for consistency and for training. So I'm going to listen to what they have to say rather than perhaps his view on what he actually introduced. The other issues he raised, we're going to have a white paper. So many of the questions he's asking will be part of that consultative approach that we will adopt when that white paper is laid before Parliament.
Karl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What my constituents tell me they're worried about, particularly, is anti-social behaviour. And what they say to me is that they want guaranteed police patrols. Can my right honourable friend agree with me that that is what this government is intending to deliver?
Well, I very much welcome that question from my honourable friend and neighbour in Kingston upon Hull. And he's absolutely right that the neighbourhood policing guarantee will include designated police officers, PCSOs and specials who will patrol particular neighbourhood areas. There will be a named officer that people can go to if there are problems around antisocial behaviour. We'll also be bringing forward respect orders, which again will deal with the most persistent people who are engaging in antisocial behaviour and stop them being in particular neighbourhood areas, or even put conditions on them, for example, if they've got an alcohol problem, that they have to get treatment and help for that particular problem. But he's absolutely right, antisocial behaviour is a big issue for many of our constituents.
Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Karl.
Thank you so much, Mr Speaker. Can I welcome the Government's announcements around neighbourhood policing? This is something that in Staffordshire, under the leadership of the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner Ben Adams and our Chief Constable Chris Noble, we have seen a real move in that direction already. So I very much welcome what the Minister has said. But the NIO, she will know, has previously raised concerns around the experience of officers in neighbourhood policing. What work will she be doing to make sure that officers have the right degree of experience so that they can maximise the announcements that have been made on neighbourhood policing?
Can I also just take this opportunity to welcome the new chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee? And I certainly know it's one of the very best jobs actually in Parliament, chairing that particular committee. As to the issue around neighbourhood policing, and I recognise that there is good practice going on around the country. Certain police forces are doing this very well indeed. But the chair of the Select Committee is absolutely right. We want to equip our neighbourhood police officers with the best training to enable them to do a really good job for their communities. So that's why we've already announced money for the College of Policing to engage and to involve those neighbourhood police officers in the training that they deserve to have, particularly around problem solving. We think this is a really important part of the role that they will play in neighbourhoods.
Lewis Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To deliver effective policing, we need reform, but also to ensure that police officers feel they have our support. Does the Minister agree with me that meeting the recommendations of the pay review body is a key part of delivering that support? And what view does she have for those, including the party opposite, who would prefer to not meet the recommendations of the pay review? And what impact would that have on police morale?
My honourable friend is absolutely right. We need to support our police officers in the work that they do to keep us all safe day in, day out. And of course, my honourable friend will know that this year we accepted the recommendations of the pay review body, and additional funding was provided to police forces to pay for that increase in salaries. I think it's really important that we continue to make sure that our police are properly remunerated for the difficult job that they do, and that's exactly what the Home Secretary has made clear in her support for police officers.
Anna Sabine.
Mr Speaker, farmers in my constituency of Freeman East Somerset tell me that not only are they often the victims of serious rural crime, including threats of physical violence, but that they don't usually bother to report that crime because they don't think our rural police forces are well resourced enough to give a full response. And if that's happening across the country, presumably it means rural crime is being seriously underreported. I wonder if the Minister could tell me what more she plans to do to resource our rural crime teams, but also to give farmers and other people living in rural areas reassurance that they can report crime and that in fact they should do so.
Excellent question.
The Honourable Lady is exactly right. We need to make sure that when crime happens, it's reported. That's absolutely vital. And as I said in my opening remarks, I think for too long people feel that it's not worth reporting because no one will come and nothing will be done. Our neighbourhood policing guarantee is not just about urban areas. It also covers rural areas, and we want to see those neighbourhoods in communities, rural communities, have the level of support that they need from policing, PCSOs and specials. I'm also responsible for rural crime, and I know there's a range of issues that we need to look at again, including theft of agricultural machinery. So that's one area that I'm particularly focused on at the moment.
Luke Meyer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Just last night, Gisborough Town FC in my constituency suffered a break-in and a burglary. I'm grateful to Cleveland Police for responding and for meeting with me this morning to update me on the situation, but there simply aren't enough of them on the streets. Can the Minister give me that assurance that this government will prioritise frontline, visible neighbourhood community policing once again?
Yes, I can, absolutely. And can I also just pay tribute to Cleveland, who have made a great deal of progress in recent times.
Sir Christopher Cho.
Speaker, will the Minister include references to fraud in her white paper? There's an organisation called Action Fraud, more accurately described as Inaction Fraud, and that is presiding over a complete failure to do anything, particularly about online fraud committed against online retailers. Can we ensure that some action is taken to help those people who are victims of fraud?
I can reassure the right honourable gentleman that the Lord's Minister, the Noble Lord Hanson, is looking at this whole area. And of course, just to gently point out that the inheritance from the previous administration around fraud is one that we are having to deal with and tackle. And some of the problems with action fraud, which were not dealt with previously, we are now going to look at.
Alison Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The latest crime figures show that shoplifting has shot up to a 20-year high, knife crime has risen yet again, and violence against women and girls remains shamefully and persistently high. Does the Minister agree with me that this shows the disgraceful dereliction of the last Tory government on law and order?
I think my honourable friend puts that very well, and that's why we have the Safer Streets mission, with our very ambitious aim to halve violence against women and girls over the next decade, to halve knife crime over the next decade, to restore neighbourhood policing and to restore confidence in the criminal justice system.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Liberal Democrats have long campaigned for proper neighbourhood policing, so we welcome this announcement. Sadly, I've heard first-hand about the concern and fear from some members of one of my communities in Dartmouth of a police decision to redeploy a local sergeant who had spent a couple of years building really positive relationships and trust with the local community, particularly around antisocial behaviour and drug dealing. So can the Minister clarify how the neighbourhood policing guarantee will be implemented and how the Home Office plans to ensure that communities have consistent and long-term access to a known named officer who will remain in the community?
Can I gently point out that the Liberal Democrats were part of the coalition government, that through those years of austerity that we did see major cuts to police officers, including neighbourhood police officers. But I do take her point now, and that's why we have the neighbourhood policing guarantee. We're having 13,000 additional police officers, PCSOs and specials. We'll have that named police officer that the Honourable Lady was requesting, that people can go to if they have problems in their area. And we want to make sure, as I said earlier, they're properly trained and that this is seen as a very important part of policing and that people want to stay in neighbourhood policing for more time.
Mr. Speaker, constituents of mine in the town of Nantwich often report experiencing unacceptable incidents of antisocial behaviour at night, particularly linked to the nighttime economy. So can I welcome this government's plan to introduce zero-tolerance zones and respect orders to get a grip of the antisocial behaviour which the last government allowed to run out of control? And can she say a little bit more about how that will help my constituents?
Well, I think I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for raising that particular point, and I think all MPs will know that antisocial behaviour can just blight communities and can cause real problems to individuals and their families. And in fact, as this week is Antisocial Behaviour Awareness Week, I was very struck by the statistic that Resolve came out with, that 1 in 7 householders are thinking of having to move because of antisocial behaviour. That's really shocking. And I think the respect orders that we're introducing, the neighbourhood policing reforms that we will have, will start to address the antisocial behaviour that for too long has blighted many of our communities.
Samuel Wilson.
Mr. Speaker. The Minister has outlined the lack of confidence that there is now in the police services across the whole of the United Kingdom because of the failure to deal with real crimes such as burglary, shoplifting, antisocial behaviour, etc. At the same time, we find that 3 police forces have spent a year investigating a tweet by a columnist from someone in Holland. Surely, if there's going to be reform of the police, one of the things we should be doing is telling the police they're no longer the thought police, they're meant to be the police dealing with crime. And if it requires a change in the bad law introduced by the last government, will she make sure that that's done so that we don't have any more of this kind of nonsense?
Well, the honourable gentleman is right in what he's saying about the priorities for this government are those crimes that affect communities and individuals. So the antisocial behaviour that we've been talking about, the threats, the knife-enabled robbery that we've seen an increase in. Those are the things that people care about. These are the things that our Safer Streets mission is designed to deal with. As to the issue which he's referring to around the non-crime hate incidents, I think it's just worth reflecting. The reason we have that is because it came out of the Macpherson inquiry around Stephen Lawrence. And that was about the murder of Stephen Lawrence. And that was about providing an intelligence picture for police officers. It may not be a crime, but it may well be something that the intelligence picture would benefit from knowing about. So I think it's just worth reflecting on that. Of course, I want consistency and common sense in the way that that's dealt with. And as I said earlier on, the Inspectorate have also highlighted the need for consistency and training because of the confusion on the guidelines that were issued by the previous government. So I'm certainly happy to look at that with the College of Policing and to make sure we get this right. But there is a place for it in some circumstances.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Residents living around Wilmot Park in West Dartford continue to be plagued by antisocial behaviour in their park, including vandalism, use of motorbikes in green spaces, noise and threatening behaviour. As part of its Safer Streets mission, will the government use police reform to ensure that these sorts of crimes are prioritised in Dartford and across the country?
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for that question? I want the police to be getting on with this now, and there are powers that they can use to deal with antisocial behaviour. But of course, we want to make sure they have additional officers through the neighbourhood policing guarantee to ensure that they can deal with the antisocial behaviour in communities. But on the issue of motorbikes, we have been very clear there will be action, there will be additional powers given to the police to make sure that they can seize and destroy those motorbikes and vehicles which are causing nuisance to communities through antisocial behaviour.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Having worked with the Right Honourable Lady on committees over a number of years, I'm delighted to congratulate her on her appointment. And in that spirit, may I make what I think is a helpful suggestion about non-crime hate incidents. Clearly, chief constables have got huge discretion on how much effort they put into investigating local crime and non-crime incidents of the sort that she says have a place in the spectrum. Could she perhaps require chief constables in the future to report back to her department how many hours they spend, their forces spend, on investigating crime incidents and investigating non-crime incidents, because it appears that tens of thousands of non-crime incidents are being investigated every year.
Can I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for those comments? And it was a great pleasure to work with him on various committees over the years. The Right Honourable Gentleman is correct. This is an operational matter. It's for Chief Constables to decide how they use the resources available to them. My understanding is that actually very little time is spent on non-crime hate incidents, but I will certainly go back and check that with His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and check that is correct, but that's my understanding.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Coming from a policing family and having served with the National Crime Agency, I'm immensely proud of British policing. but equally devastated at the decline that it was overseen by the opposite party. Can the Minister outline what we're doing to rebuild British policing and returning it to the best police force in the world?
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for his question and also for his service. And I think we will all benefit from having the honourable gentleman in the House to give his experience and knowledge and to share that with us. I think the police reform agenda that we've set out in the written ministerial statement yesterday and the speech by the Home Secretary is about resetting that relationship with the police. But we want to work with the police. This is not about doing things to the police. It's about working collectively to get the very best police service that we can have for this country, for today and tomorrow and the years ahead.
Richard Tash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My residents in Boston and Skegness want the police on the streets, preventing antisocial behaviour and preventing crime. They don't want our valuable police resources wasted on monitoring tweets for non-crime hate incidents, threatening and bullying residents, and then that record remains on the database and can prevent them getting a job in the future. It's a complete waste of time. Will the Minister and the Home Office just scrap those guidelines as an unnecessary use of valuable time and resources?
Can I just say to the honourable gentleman, this government has been very clear about its priorities in terms of policing. We've set out in our Safer Streets mission that we are going to halve violence against women and girls, we're going to halve knife crime over the next decade, we're going to restore the confidence of the public in the criminal justice system, particularly in the police. We're going to introduce neighbourhood policing because we know that's the bedrock of policing in this country. It's the area that most people want to see the investment going into. That's exactly what our priority is. The Prime Minister has said that, the Home Secretary has said that, and I think that's where the focus of the attention of the police needs to be.
Alistair Strathern.
Speaker. Far too many of my towns and villages have for too long had to endure rising levels of antisocial behaviour, rising riding of unsafe dirt bikes through the village centres, and an epidemic of shoplifting, including at my local Morrison's, who I met with last month. I'm working closely with our local Police and Crime Commissioner, John Tizard, to push for more robust police response. But what reassurances can the Minister give my constituents that our new strategy will ensure much more priority is given to these crimes and they aren't simply tolerated, as they have far too often seemed to be in the past?
Can I thank my honourable friend for the work that he's doing on this really important area. And shop theft and attacks on retail workers are something that this government is committed to dealing with. We will be bringing forward legislation in due course. But it's absolutely part of our Safer Streets mission, that focus on high streets and town centres and communities, that people feel safe, that there is a police presence and that antisocial behaviour will not be tolerated.
Munira Wilson.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Week in, week out, police officers from my Twickenham constituency are extracted to go and police protests and events in central London. Madam Deputy Speaker, my constituents and I are proud to live in our great capital city and in a democracy where the right to protest is cherished. However, under the Conservatives since 2015, the capital city grant has been cut by 17% in real terms, and that is the money that should be used to police these protests, not community policing resources, which is what the Met Police Commissioner is having to do. So will the Minister review the capital city grant so that my constituents can see a Bobby on the beat again?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, the Honourable Lady will know that the announcements around the police settlement, the provisional police settlement, will be made in December in this House, and the discussions are underway at the moment about exactly the point that the Honourable Lady is raising. I note what she says about the levels of abstraction, and that is a concern. But again, I would say this government is committed to the 13,000 additional police officers, PCSOs and specials in our neighbourhoods, and the Metropolitan Police area will benefit from that, just as every other police area will as well.
Chris Vins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. When I spend time canvassing in my constituency, which I do quite often in Harlow, residents tell me they don't see community police officers anymore. Since 2010, when we had over 30 PCSOs for the whole of Harlow, we now have 4. Can the Minister talk to me about how the Safer Streets mission will actually make residents in my constituency of Harlow feel safer?
Can I thank my honourable friend for that question? And it is worth just reflecting on the fact that PCSOs have actually halved in the last 14 years, and specials have been reduced by 2/3. And I think those are quite shocking figures. We want to make sure that we use PCSOs because they are such a valuable way of policing neighbourhoods. And also, I'm personally committed to making sure that we see more specials on the beat, because I think that people who stand up for their local community and do this on a voluntary basis are to be commended, and I hope across the House we would all support an extension of the work of specials.
Ben Obsojecti.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Cambridgeshire Constabulary is one of the most poorly funded in the country under the current police allocation formula, which is based on population data from 2012. Cambridgeshire has grown vastly since then and is projected to grow by nearly 20% in the next decade. So in order to fulfil their pledges and ensure that neighbourhood officers aren't overstretched under her plans, will the Policing Minister commit to reviewing the formula before the forthcoming announcement of the 2025-26 police funding settlement so that Cambridgeshire receives its fair share of the 0.5 billion increase? And can she explain how many officers of those 13,000 each force will receive?
Well, the Home Secretary announced yesterday that there will be £500 million additional funding to policing, including the core grant and money for neighbourhood policing that will be for next year. In terms of the announcements for 25-26, the full announcements, they will be made in December in the normal way in this House.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Antisocial behaviour, fly tipping, off-road bikes, e-scooters racing along pavements and the streets, and alongside an epidemic of shoplifting are all issues raised time and time again by my constituents across all wards of Portsmouth North. Does the Minister agree that we need police officers back on the beat in local communities, equipped with tougher powers to crack down on these crimes, to not only make the people of Portsmouth feel safer, but to have pride back in our communities?
Yeah.
My honourable friend puts that incredibly well, and that's why we have the Safer Streets mission, and we will have those police officers, PCSOs and specials back in our communities, policing for the vast majority of law-abiding citizens and dealing with the antisocial behaviour that for too long has blighted communities.
David Chadwick.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In 2012, I was run over by a car in the Netherlands, and I woke up in hospital several days later with some fairly severe injuries. I'm thankful that the resulting police investigation was swift and efficient. However, unfortunately, that's not the case in the UK. Forensic collision units across the country are facing severe challenges in preparing cases. That's resulting in large delays to trials and ultimately to justice, prolonging the agony for impacted families. What's the department doing to help the police tackle these resourcing challenges and ensure that those road traffic collision cases come to a swifter conclusion?
Well, first of all, I'm very sorry to hear about the accident that the honourable gentleman suffered in 2012, and I hope that he's made a very full recovery. As to the particular point, I'm going to go away and ask my officials about that and what more we can do to ensure that justice is done when there's road collisions and that cases go to court quickly.
Mark Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm often contacted by businesses across Gateshead Central and Wickham complaining about high street crime. A recent spate of crimes on Lowfell High Street has left some businesses potentially having to close. With shop thefts up 40% in the past year alone, what will these very welcome measures do to lower crime on our high streets?
My honourable friend makes a really important point, and of course high streets are the lifeblood of our local communities, and we want to make sure that they are as safe as possible, that businesses are not suffering losses through shop theft and assaults on their workers. So I think the package that we've got around dealing with antisocial behaviour, the neighbourhood policing guarantee, the new prosecutions which will come forward when we bring in legislation around retail assaults on retail workers, and getting rid of that £200 threshold for cases to go forward for shop theft. A package. We're not going to do one thing that's going to solve the problem, but we are going to make sure there's a whole package around the high street, neighbourhoods and communities to make them safer and for businesses to thrive, because we need them to do that, because we need them to pay their taxes so we can then invest back into public services.
Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. 2 years ago, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner said that 3,000 officers were not deployable for reasons of physical fitness, and 500 were not deployable for reasons of misconduct allegations. That's more than 10% of the headcount of the Met. So can she tell us what the latest numbers are and whether she plans to make it easier for chief constables to fire underperforming officers as they've requested?
I can write to the Honourable Gentleman with the figures, but clearly the Metropolitan Police over the last 14 years, there have been issues, and I know the current Commissioner has raised concerns about the procedures for getting rid of police officers. So the Honourable Gentleman doesn't mind. I've been the policing minister for 5 months. That compares to 14 years that his side were responsible for policing. And I didn't see any action then on dealing with the issues that he's raising with me. Now, I can guarantee that this government will be looking at the workforce, will be making sure that we recruit the right people into policing and we vet police officers throughout their career, because of the shocking cases that we've seen, David Carrick and others. We are going to take action. We set that out in our manifesto in terms of having a workforce that's fit for purpose. And I have to say to the Honourable Gentleman, I know he's very new in this place, but he does need to remember the legacy that his government, his party, delivered to us when we arrived in July.
Mark Seward.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Whenever I speak with residents in my constituency, whenever I speak with business leaders or their staff, they're all telling me the same thing. Whether it's the staff at Wortley Asda who are having to deal with persistent shoplifting, or if it's the stallholders at Morley Market who tell me that they're having to deal with crime in Morley on the high street, they all tell me that police don't turn up and that they never see police patrols in our communities anymore. So will the Minister confirm today that we are going to return to neighbourhood policing, that we will see police on our streets patrolling again, and that we will have named police officers turn up when things go wrong?
Yeah.
My honourable friend is absolutely right. That's the experience many members of Parliament will find when they talk to their constituents, that they feel there's no point in reporting things because nothing will happen, no one will come. And that's why the neighbourhood policing guarantee is so important. We will have those police officers, PCSOs and specials back on our streets. The visible presence will be there. So I can absolutely say that's part of our Safer Streets mission, and that's what we will deliver.
Tessa Munt.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I associate myself with the comments that were made by the Honourable Member for Hazel Grove and Freeman East Somerset, particularly in relation to things like rural crime, car racing, bike racing, threatening behaviour, burglary and shoplifting, and the frustration that people feel with the delays and lack of response, and not using things like camera footage that are taken forward on every day. That frustration is nonetheless absolutely dwarfed by the fact that the figures that are apparent to us for the previous Avon and Somerset Police and Crime Commissioner. He had 28.5 full-time equivalent members of staff and a budget that was massive. My constituents have no idea how that is justified when what they want are police officers. Could she make sure that her review actually includes getting a grip on what's happening in the PCC offices, please?
Well, the Honourable Lady will have an opportunity when the White Paper is published to make her and her constituents' views clear. And clearly there will be questions around the different roles, the Home Secretary's role, the PCC role, the operational independence that Chief Constables have. So that will be part of the discussion and the debate around how we take forward the White Paper and the recommendations that come out of it.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and also thank the Speaker for granting this urgent question, which is on the minds of so many of my constituents. Stalking is a form of psychological violence that remains severely underreported. I've met constituents who are victims of stalking, and they've shared with me the lack of the support they feel they're receiving from the Metropolitan Police. They live in constant terror and anxiety, even after taking the brave step of reporting these offences. Can the Minister outline what steps her department is taking to work with the Metropolitan Police to ensure officers receive proper training to identify stalking, support and protect victims and take robust action against perpetrators?
I welcome the question from the Honourable Gentleman, and I am really concerned to hear what he's saying. The Minister for Safeguarding is dealing with the issue of stalking. I know she feels very strongly about this. So I think it might be helpful if the Honourable Gentleman could write to the Minister for Safeguarding. I'll certainly raise this with her myself, because it may be those experiences we need to feed in to make sure that the Metropolitan Police are doing everything they need to support victims of stalking who bravely come forward.
Jim Shannon.
Deputy Speaker, it's always a pleasure to see the Honourable Lady from the back benches to the front bench and doing equally good in relation. So I very much welcome the Safer Streets programme and enhancement of community policing. Can the Minister outline how this drive can be a UK-wide drive, change and address the money lending and drug warfare that blights all of our communities throughout the United Kingdom? I'm thinking very much of paramilitary groups in Northern Ireland, criminal gangs in the UK mainland who work together, share their criminal activities. And so within the police reform, Minister, what opportunity will there be to discuss how better we can work alongside in relation to the Police and Justice Minister in Northern Ireland and the PSNI? We can do better together. Thank you.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be questioned by the Honourable Member, and I just wanted to say to him that when I chaired the Home Affairs Select Committee, we did a report on drugs, and we went to Belfast to look at drug problems in Belfast and in Northern Ireland, and I was very struck by the particular issues there around the involvement of paramilitaries. And so I think it would be really helpful if the Honourable Gentleman and myself could have a conversation about what more we can do on that particular issue when we're looking at the broader Safer Streets mission.
That concludes that urgent question. We now move on to the second urgent question, and I'll just give a few seconds for the front benches to adjust.